Ah yes, boys and girls, the 3DS. An important time for the aging handheld back in the day, since this was the fourth iteration of the console after the DS Lite and the DSi back in that weird day when the DS didn't have internet capability. But now Nintendo was coming out with a renovation with gyroscopic sensors and the somewhat impressive stereoscopic or whatever 3D that allowed the console to project actual 3D graphics without the use of a peripheral, which, worked if you kept your head within a 5-degree range of motion for hours at a time. In my time, it seems like it depends on your mileage on whether or not it was a good addition. It doesn't seem to have an impact on literal graphics quality, it's more if you want to see it pop off the screen or not while you're playing the game. With the 3DS coming out, Nintendo got its studios into gear getting games onto its newfangled technology to show it off. And I'd have to say that the early days of the handheld were a mixed bag. Not everyone can make good use of the innovation, like the Mario game that was on it, which was a mediocre recreation of a 20-year-old game, or the Yoshi's Island game, which was a boring rehash of old ideas. And then there were Federation Force and Triforce Heroes later on, which, fuck me sideways, I don't even want to talk about those frickin' releases. The sorta notable success story was the Pokemon series, which, being veterans of handheld play, did make the most use of the new features by adding their new monsters, renovating some graphics ideas, and providing something worthwhile to the platform. So, which camp is our lovable furball going to fall under? Well, how do I put this diplomatically? I don't think Kirby is ever going to reach a point of being a legitimately terrible game. Even at their worst, Kirby still maintains the all-important enjoyment factor as a baseline. Even as much as Canvas Curse was a bad idea terribly executed, it still wasn't the worst thing that the handheld has ever seen, and hell, it was actually probably playable if you could get your head around the inherent uncontrollability of limbless Kirby. But Triple Deluxe really is the game that HAL got browbeaten into making by Nintendo while they were dying to do something else, literally anything. Triple Deluxe as a game looks like the product that you develop exclusively on Friday afternoons with 1/3 of the floor having gone on vacation for an entire year. It's got so little charm and creativity that it's like the credits roll had their spirits crushed to bring it to market, being crushed under consistent boredom. The world of the game is terribly realized and thought out. The levels are typical fare with nothing much to stand out other than their eye-blazing backgrounds. HAL did attempt to try and do that thing that Donkey Kong did where they had multiple level backgrounds so that you could jump into the background to add some depth to their platforming. But the thing they forgot was that Donkey Kong had a consistent difficulty and speed to their gameplay that combined in order to make this fast-paced knife-edge platforming, and in Triple Deluxe, that whole 3D level idea is like they took a normal level, cut it up into little pieces, and then taped it back together in post, like a bad YouTube video. And lastly, the villain is right out of the school of not giving two shits. The villain causes this huge beanstalk to appear out of nowhere that allows her to kidnap DDD and his army to use for her own nefarious purposes, and Kirby has to chase her down through 6 worlds in order to stop her. Yes, it's literally the new Mario plotline to the T, except Kirby has somewhat of a unique villain to work with. Spoiler alert. The main antagonist is a magic-wielding queen bee that wants to suck the life out of pop stars so that she can reproduce and take over the galaxy. Like I said, I don't think anyone actually working on this game came into work that year with anything exciting to do. When you look back at the highlights in this game, you can definitely tell that the developers just started giving up one by one. Get this one in the can as soon as fucking possible so that we can move on to a project we actually care about making. Nintendo really wanted to get their mainstays onto their precious new handheld, and so they asked HAL over and over again to do it until they said fine and slapped something together just to make their significant other shut up for 5 years. But to be absolutely 100% fair, HAL did try to put a unique stamp on this game with the addition of the Hypernova ability, which allows Kirby to eat ridiculously huge objects. But it has virtually the same effect on the game as New Yoshi's Island Giant Egg ability, where it's a really cool looking invincibility mode purely made so that developers could put it in the trailer as part of the hype train, because in practice all you need to do is walk through a part of the level and occasionally hit the nuke everything button until you reach the end with no challenge whatsoever. Additionally, the boss fights in the game actually do look cool, since they jump into the background and throw out attacks at 3D angles surrounded by these flashy visuals, and that adds some kind of tension to the game. It actually makes the boss fights stand out, since now it requires dodging and maneuvering in unprecedented ways when Kirby is stuck on the 2D plane dealing with all this shit that's now happening around him. The added graphics powers does make the boss fights stand out and pop off the screen. Everything's getting prettied up so that you can really appreciate the character model and effects that they put into the encounters. The boss fights have the production value, but when you switch that over to the regular gameplay, the prettied up backgrounds don't add much of anything to it, and I'm sure that's because while HAL is using the new graphics power to make their level designs, the types of levels that they're actually making are all stuff we've seen in Kirby games from 5 years ago. These grasslands, deserts, water worlds, and then the space world, it's simple, it's overdone, and indistinct from every other game in the series. Hell, even Kirby's usual puzzly bits and collectible challenges, these things that require these specific copy abilities to be carried over, were downgraded across the board from their previous entries, as the game's sons are easier to find than ever, and one of the only reasons to even try for that in the first place is to get celebratory keychains, which represent enemies and objects from across the franchise as appreciation to the fans for sticking with the series for over 20 years. It's kind of like the Smash Trophies thing, except it's more boring since you're just doing that collection for one series, and thus there's just a lot less to collect in general. The one thing that HAL did bring to the table is an attempt at motion controls, and thankfully with the advent of hindsight, we can see that at least they did it correctly and made the motion controls very vague and exclusively used for unimportant parts of the game, since actually relying on motion controls is a disaster piece waiting to happen. The gyroscope of the 3DS is used to move or launch Kirby to places and not much else, mostly elevators and cannons. The implementation is barely there. I mean, it works, it's just there's not much to it. It's not noticeable in the frickin' slightest, and seems to have been begrudgingly added and admitted by even the developers themselves that this was a stupid idea that is not going to advance Nintendo's prestige as a hardware developer, which again, it did not, and it's never going to. We're looking at you, 1-2 Switch. Okay, in an effort to pull back the screen here on the old review process, I've looked over the footage time and time again for Triple Deluxe, trying to find anything to talk about, and I mean literally anything of note. I have almost never ragged on a Kirby game, not really once in earnest. I might have called the series repetitive and falling back on its own iconography at times, kind of like Mario and Yoshi that we discussed at the earlier video. I took an axe against Squeak Squad and Canvas Curse, probably the Mirror of Darkness or whatever the Metroidvania one was called, yet I don't hold any legitimate malice towards the franchise. I don't think any of them have approached actually being unredeemable and completely unfun, but looking over Triple Deluxe, I seriously think that HAL Labs did not even try with the development of this game. This was absolutely a mediocre trash product that they produced real goddamn quickly just to get it out the damn door, with the only real differentiation from it and its series being these 3DS gimmicks and this stupid invincibility spin-off that adds nothing to the game. Like, at the end of the day, a video game has one thing to do, and it's the worst type of game because it's not even fun. It's just mediocre. It's boring. There's nothing there to talk about. Like, it's not even as fun as the insanely rare times in Mario that you get to use a Mega Mushroom. Like 3 times throughout that entire series, not counting the remake of Toadstool Titan for Mario Party Superstars. And yes, I'm still calling it Toadstool Titan, god damn it. But with Triple Deluxe, I always have high expectations for HAL, because they've done so much good work. So I was looking for something that I was overlooking. I figured that there was something that I missed. Something that's worth talking about. And honestly, I just gave up. There's no new mechanics, gameplay section, story beat that I missed. Hell, there's only like one cutscene in the game right before the King DDD boss fight. Triple Deluxe truly has nothing to show for itself, and that's why I can only see this game as the Kirby equivalent to Super Mario 3D Land. A cheap spin-off of the franchise used to launch the new console and nothing else. It's not meant to inspire or push the series forward, it's just literally there to be, hopefully, a launch. I can't imagine this game being middle of the frickin' library for the console. It just doesn't make any sense considering what's actually in the cartridge. Hell, in the actual review part of this episode before, I didn't even say the big important thing that Triple Deluxe doesn't even last that long as a game. I shot through the game blind in like 5 hours. That's fucking pathetic, and it really does show that HAL did not care about this production. They couldn't think of more things to put in the game to make it last longer, like 6 levels? Seriously? The last game I did for this series before this game was Return to Dreamland, and man, what a night and day comparison these games are. Return had everything: interesting level design, the puzzling bits, the fun combat, the good boss fights, a nice real swath of copy abilities, and the actual plot, the actual character betrayal that was in that game, plus co-op functionality. What a revolution for the series that was, and several years later, we get this pathetic regression. Something that was probably thrown together in, what, like 15 months by a team that really should have just known better. I feel bad for the people who shelled out the top price for this game because of HAL's brand power, because they got under-delivered hardcore. Obviously it's not a bad game, but coming from HAL Labs, one of Nintendo's golden sheep, this was clearly way below their standard. I really hope that Nintendo was to blame for this, because if HAL planned and produced this game in this state, then there might be some dark times ahead for Kirby, and I would absolutely hate to see that modern Kirby is going down a dark path where there's nothing cool to see in the future. I guess we'll just have to see what awaits when we look at the Wii U Kirby game. What a time to be a fan when the consoles available are the 3DS, which sent a few franchises spiraling into a ditch, and the Wii U, the flaming trash can of consoles. I guess anything can happen, but goddamn, the odds do not look like they're in my favor here for the last few games on the list. I'll thank you for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys next time for whatever the heck's next. Also, have a well-deserved victory for gamers if you're still around to hear it. I'll see you guys next time.